From GV Wire and the Community Media Access Collaborative, this is an Election 2019 Candidates Forum. We're talking today with the candidates for Fresno City Council District 2. I'm Randy Reed with GV Wire, and I'd like to introduce the four candidates who have joined us in the CMAC studio today. They are business owner Lawrence Garcia. Next to Mr. Garcia is attorney Jared Gordon. Next to Mr. Gordon is business owner Mike Carbasi. And to my immediate right is special needs therapist Oscar Sandoval. All right, gentlemen, thank you all for being here and participating in today's forum. Let's get right to it. The election is really days away, and I want to know from each of you what differentiates you from your opponents up here on this stage. In the remaining days of the race, why should the voters choose you over your opponents? And we're going to start with Lawrence Garcia.
Thank you, Randy. I think my main separator is the fact that I'm the only veteran in the race. I've been a planning commissioner for the last 5 years, so I'm already dealing with what the city's land use and many of the other details that it takes to run the city. My history of successful business ownership, I have multiple businesses here in the Valley, one of which is started right here in Fresno, California, and we've grown it to 8 other states where we employ hundreds of employees across the United States. I believe my history of leadership, history of successful businesses, my involvement with the city makes me the most qualified candidate for the race.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, thank you. Jared Gordon, what makes you the most qualified candidate?
So I've devoted half a lifetime of service to the city of Fresno, starting from my very first job as a city council intern for Mike Briggs. All the way up through today, I've been heavily involved in many different civic organizations, and that's a part of who I am, is giving back to the community that I love, and I think I've been doing it consistently for my entire professional life. I'm also the only business attorney here at the podiums, and I'm uniquely qualified to understand the hurdles that businesses have to overcome to do business in the city of Fresno so that we can eliminate those hurdles and improve business and prosperity for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Mike Carbasi, why should voters choose you over your opponents?
Well, thank you, Randy, GV Wire, CMAC, and people for watching. What differentiates me, I am the only candidate born and raised in the district. My family has had a small business here for 40 years. I have deep roots here. I went to local public school. I was raised with Northwest Fresno values. I believe I'm the only candidate who's a Fresno State grad. That's a plus. But the biggest thing is I've been able to spend the past 9 months walking door to door, building a broad base of support. I'm the only candidate to be endorsed by our top law enforcement officers. I have the support of Lisa Smitkamp. I'm endorsed by Jerry Dyer, our police chief, our sheriff, Margaret Mims, as well as our police officers and our firefighters, and then, of course, other groups like the Chamber of Commerce and business leaders in the district. So I think that being able to bring people together is going to be really, really important on this council. We have kind of a fractured council at City Hall, and I envision myself as the person that can build that bridge between the mayor and the council, because I'm focused not on politics, but on results.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Oscar Sandoval, make your best case.
So Randy, thank you for having us. I'm uniquely qualified for this position because, one, I'm the only candidate with a policy background. I think for me, I've actually worked with these underserved populations. The mental health is a big deal here in Fresno. I've actually spent my career working with people that need these resources. I've actually engaged with people that are actively working to help our homeless community. I'm the only candidate that really is thinking about the future of the city. With all due respect to my opponents, I'm hearing the same old, same old. We need to proactively embrace the future. Fresno's population is going to double to about 1 million people in 20 years. And if we don't prepare for that now, then that population is going to come for us and not the other way around.
Okay, thank you all. We're looking forward to further elucidations of your positions, and we'll get to that right now. Let's talk about the effectiveness of Fresno City Hall today and how effective City Hall is at meeting the needs of the taxpayers in District 2. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to give me a number. How well is City Hall getting the job done for Northwest Fresno? What rating do you give City Hall, and what do you base your rating on? Jared, let's start with you on that question. Give me a number, 1 to 10. How well is City Hall doing for Northwest Fresno?
Well, I'm going to say that the true answer is incomplete. And the reason it's incomplete is that there are some things that the city of Fresno does very well for Northwest Fresno. The police are very successful in preventing and investigating significant crimes of violence in Northwest Fresno. Now, although it wasn't maybe true a short while ago, now I think generally speaking there's good fire coverage for most of Northwest Fresno. And so the fire department, which is sort of the second thing that the city does, is probably generally there. And although we have decent parks in Northwest Fresno, some of our parks really could use substantially more maintenance, could use improvement, and need all kinds of additional capital spending. Then it comes to streets, where I think we really have a lot of problems with our infrastructure in Northwest Fresno, in particular traffic problems, potholes, et cetera. And so I give it an incomplete only because there are so many things that the city does well in Northwest Fresno and so many things that need improvement. I don't think it's fair to give the city as a whole, to give City Hall as a whole, a grade for Northwest Fresno. I think it really comes down to what do we fail at and what do we succeed at. And I hope to change the things that we fail at.
So no number. You're not going to give us a number.
I'm not going to give you a number.
Okay. All right. Mike Carbasi, can you give us a number?
I can. Good question. I'm going to say 5. If it was a higher number, I wouldn't be running. This is why I'm running for city council. This is not targeting one department or one group. The reason why it's a 5, we don't have a council member right now. The kind of council member we have, having one makes a difference, but having one who's going to focus on constituent services. Folks, my cell phone number is 601-0564. That's 601-0564. It's important to have someone accessible. Neighborhood meetings are important. Having a council member walk door to door, even when they're elected, is really important because your issue could be a broken sidewalk. There was a resident, real quick, I'll get into this. You go to my website, mikeforfresno.com, and you can see the video. Resident called the city. There was a hole in her, there was a leak in her park. The city came out and dug a 4-foot hole. She's a retired Valley Children's nurse. They took off. That was Friday. Now it's Sunday night. She calls me. I'm all excited. I go out there. What's going on? And that hole filled with water, so it was a puddle. And a child, it was an accident waiting to happen. It took me working with the city and pushing City Hall and having different departments fight 4 days to get that thing taken care of. As your councilman, I want to do it that Sunday evening. I mean, we've got to get out there. So that's 5.
All
That's
right,
my
5
number.
from Mike Carbasi. Lawrence Garcia, what number would you give the city of Fresno?
Well, I don't want to add to the list of Fresno continues to get these low-ranking marks on multiple lists, and I don't want to contribute to it. As a matter of fact, I'm here to change that. I'm the only candidate up here that's truly has multiple businesses, and I know the process of running businesses, and I know the process how congested or tangled the process can be, and that's what I want to focus on. I want to look at the different departments. What are the multiple steps it goes through for a business to be started here or an entrepreneur to start a new idea? Why does it take so many steps? How come it has to have so many approvals from multiple different people, multiple different agencies? I'm not saying that just anybody can do anything, but I want to really look back at how the process can be streamlined and made better for this.
Can you speak to that in terms of District 2 as well, Northwest Fresno specifically?
Well, I mean, you just hear about it, especially when we're knocking on the doors. We're all knocking on doors, and we hear multiple times of either someone trying to get a sprinkler fixed or the sidewalks when they're pushed up. If they're not calling themselves, they're trying to get that information, and they see that the process is taking just way too long, too many steps.
Okay.
My opponent said, yeah, Fresno does a lot of good things and a lot of things right, but there's also a lot of things that we can improve, and that's where I would focus on if I'm elected.
Number ranking? You going to give a number ranking?
I don't want to contribute to the low ranks, and
give it a high rank.
I want to turn that around, and I think I can help with that.
Okay.
So,
Oscar Sandoval, give us a number.
Just sticking to Northwest Fresno, I would give it about a 3. One of the main reasons that I got into this race in the first place was because I went to a council meeting with the anti-panhandling ordinance. Councilman Brandow said that he spent 18 months working on that. With all the problems that Fresno has, you're going to waste that much time just on something so frivolous? We need to do better. I can provide that. So, and furthermore, our past representation hasn't really represented our entire district. If you ask the people at Pinedale, if you ask the people at Radio City, if you ask the people that live in forgotten Fresno, which is west of the 99 where I live, there are so many problems that we deal with just from poor planning, poor roads, and just traffic literally every weekday. So I would give it about a 3 because our past representatives haven't done enough for us. So we need to represent everyone in the district, not just those in certain areas that are contributors, but everyone.
Okay. Jared Gordon, you mentioned police services as one aspect of what you'll look at for Northwest Fresno. Let's talk a little bit about that. Public safety and the perception of public safety, certainly always an issue in Fresno City Council campaigns, no different in this one. The city is currently conducting a nationwide search for a replacement for Chief Jerry Dyer, who's retiring after some 18 years as chief. Are you looking for a chief that will essentially continue the policies and practices that Chief Dyer has pursued during his tenure, or are you looking for some kind of a change? Oscar Sandoval, how do you feel about the next police chief in the city of Fresno?
So the next police chief needs to be someone that actively engages with over-policed communities, that actually engages with people of color. One thing that I've been proposing, well, a few things actually, has been kind of a career fair of sorts for these poor neighborhoods, these overly policed neighborhoods, because we had about a month ago, there was about 5 shootings in a weekend. There was one shooting where officers were on scene and none of the witnesses wanted to cooperate. That's a problem because it doesn't solve the crime and the bad guy gets away. So what we need to do is we need to be proactive about our police chief, about our policing in general, and we need someone that is willing to bridge that divide and willing to like invest in things like PAL, invest in things that kind of bridge that relationship and allow for kids in those neighborhoods to get to know the beat cops that patrol their neighborhoods, and they can have a relationship with them, because that will ultimately pay dividends and that will reduce crime.
So, Oscar, there are internal candidates as well as external candidates for the police chief position. Do you think an internal candidate could do the things that you're asking to be done?
I'd have to weigh the pros and cons of each candidate. I think if you're bringing someone that's internal, you have someone that knows Fresno, which is always great. But sometimes you can benefit from an outsider's perspective. So I would need to meet with the prospective candidates, kind of view what their philosophies are on policing. I would hope that they want to bridge that divide, as I've been saying, and really just build a better relationship between the community and the police.
Okay. Jared Gordon, continuation of Jerry Dyer's policies or something new? What do we need?
So in terms of our next police chief, I think the most important things that we can look for are a police chief that's going to adopt and focus on best practices as observed throughout the country. Certainly Chief Dyer, although he has been an excellent chief at dealing with some kinds of crime, does not have all of the best ideas in the country. And we need to have a police chief that's willing to adopt and consider all the best practices that other police chiefs have successfully implemented throughout the country. We also need to have a police chief with knowledge of contemporary policing science and criminology, someone who has paid attention to some of the criminology studies out there so that we can actually determine, scientifically, there are some policing approaches that work better than others, and we should focus on the things that we can provably know are better policing strategies than others. Now that said, if we can get a police chief from the region that meets those kinds of criteria and that embraces those kinds of ideas, I absolutely think that we would be better off hiring from within the department and within the region if we can find a police chief that exemplifies those same criteria.
Okay. Lawrence Garcia, what is your opinion of the tenure of Chief Dyer and whether those policies should be continued, or do we need to go a different direction?
Well, I definitely think there's an advantage for Jerry Dyer to be the next mayor. I do like the fact that we can reach out to the nation and see what other people are out there. In my opinion, he's the headliner right now, but it'd be nice to see what we can compare him to, or other chiefs that might be bringing other fresh ideas to city of Fresno. I'm always interested in that, but I do like the fact that Jerry Dyer has a definite the history with the Fresno, the history with crime rate in the area. He definitely will have the advantage over somebody else from outside the area, but I do support him, and I do believe that he's doing a good job.
Okay, so you want to see those policies as continue in the police department after he retires, the same policies that Jerry Dyer has pursued?
Well, I'd like to hear which ones he thinks are important to either bring in as new. I'd like to see what he thinks he wants to change. I haven't heard a lot of talk about those types of things, other than just the fact that he's the main person that looks like he's in the lead. But yeah, I think we need to hear more of what he wants to do, and hear and compare that to some outside people as well.
Okay, Mike Carbazzi, give us your assessment.
We're never going to have another Jerry Dyer. I feel bad for the next chief. He's got some big shoes to fill. And I just want to make one thing clear about Chief Dyer. I know there's talk and people talk, but there's reality versus talk. Some people say he doesn't engage with communities of color. That's completely untrue. He is the guy who's sitting in the room praying with the mothers whose children have been shot. He is the person working with Breaking the Chains, which is a great organization to stop human trafficking in our community. I don't think it's appropriate just because you may disagree with someone politically to be able to, go after someone. He has served for 40 years in our police department, and he's a cop's cop, and I have a lot of respect for him. When it comes to the next chief of police, I'm going to tell you why I prefer someone from the Valley. I want someone that has roots here. The average tenure of a police chief is 4 years. It's nice to have someone who's going to stick around. We've gone through a few fire chiefs recently. We lost one in Anaheim, and I get it, Disneyland. But it's really important to have someone who's going to engage with our community and be able to actually build those roots. A couple of our candidates are in the department right now, and they're engaging with the community. And by the way, Chief Dyer and one of those candidates, they're already involved with PAL. So, and my fiancee Paulette, she was a recipient. She was involved with PAL when she was a youth. So I see the benefit of being more proactive and helping our children. But we're going to adopt the practices that we have that work well, and a new chief's going to bring a different perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
We need a little bit more. Just speaking personally as a first-generation American, as someone that has actually worked intimately with these communities, someone that is kind of familiar with all of the challenges that they're facing. I once had a client who their house was riddled with bullet holes from a shooting the week before, and I can tell you how terrifying that is. I imagine a lot of the people here are parents. Imagine if just one day your house was just shot up, and there was no cooperation from anyone in the neighborhood because they were afraid to work with the police. Again, we need to bridge that divide, and we need to do more in the way of community policing. So I hope the next police chief does that.
Can I add something to that?
Go right ahead.
The police did not riddle that person's house with bullets.
I'm not saying they did. No, criminals did. But
I understand.
The thing is, more needs to be done in a proactive setting.
I have a suggestion for everyone here. If you haven't participated in the Citizens Police Academy, do it. Go on ride-alongs and finish the whole shift, by the way. Go out there and see what's actually happening. And you'll interact with the public, you'll interact with the department and get a real perspective for what they go through every day. That's just my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Let's
And
continue
that's fine
on.
too, but the thing is, we need people that are actually going to be proactive about the solutions for, to prevent crime in the first place. A lot of things need to go wrong in a kid's life before they pick up a gun. So we need to cut that off at the root. So
let's talk about this. So Mike, I'm going to stay with you for a moment.
Okay.
You say Fresno needs about 200 more sworn police officers than it currently has, correct?
I actually don't say that. The FBI says that.
Okay.
Yeah. And
But you agree with that?
I agree with the FBI.
Okay,
yeah.
so pretty much everyone also agrees that each one of those additional officers, if they are brought on board, cost about $120,000 a year to fund that position, right?
Correct.
So if Fresno needs 200 officers at $120,000 a year, that's about $24 million a year to bring 200 new police officers on. You could wave a magic wand and get those officers tomorrow. I'm wondering, how should the District 2 share of those officers, because they're distributed across the city, right? So how should the District 2 share of those officers be deployed? What are the most significant public safety needs right now in District 2 that are going unmet that sworn police officers can address?
So I was walking a neighborhood this afternoon on Sierra, and this happens a lot in the Herndon and Milburn area. Property crimes, they're out of control. Smash and grabs. You leave your car unlocked, then maybe they're not going to smash your window, but they're going to take your stuff. If you have anything in your car, not even a wallet. I had chips in my car, somebody smashed my window. It was the craziest thing. Property crimes, mailbox theft. Mailbox theft is a very personal crime. But this past weekend, we had a few robberies off Sierra as well. And one person, his 18-year-old daughter, went face-to-face with someone that invaded their home. This is the reality of what's happening. I'm not trying to stoke fear. I'm telling you, arm your alarm system when you're home. Be diligent, watch out for your neighbors, be safe. But the reality is we've had an increase in property crime in Northwest. And right now our officers are going to priority 0, priority 1 calls. The number one responsibility of any city, especially Fresno, is your safety, the safety of your businesses, your homes, your lives, and your children.
So let me ask you, Mike, are you looking for those officers to be arresting those property vandals and thieves, or are you looking for them to do something else in the way of intervention?
Well, definitely being proactive is great. Our Captain Farah, really does engage regularly with the community. There was a meeting in the West area about a month ago, and he went there and talked to folks about how to stay safe. There was a machete-wielding crazy person trying to break into someone's home off Herndon and Milburn, close to former Chief Winchester's house. And he went out there and spoke to that community on what to do to be safe. So we can be proactive, But when we catch someone, they need to go to jail. The problem is we keep releasing people from jail, and that's a statewide issue.
So more police, more arrests. That's what you're looking for?
Well, more accountability, absolutely. More safety, that's
Okay,
what we need.
Let's get some comments from the other members up here. So Jared Gordon, go right ahead.
All right, so I'm going to add first that I think one of the most important things to do here is to disagree with part of the premise of your question.
Okay.
So you're assuming that somehow we can get $24 million out of nowhere to pay for cops without any trade-offs. And that's the real problem with a promise like trying to get 200 more cops, is that 200 more cops is $24 million a year. It is, in fact, because there's a 5-year no layoff clause, a guarantee that you're going to spend about $125 million over the course of the next 5 years on those additional officers. And that's a lot of other services that we don't have the ability to provide if we were to bring on 200 new officers. Fresno, unfortunately, does not have, I think, the economic base to quite support that yet. Hopefully someday we can, through thoughtful planning and through thoughtful efforts to reduce the kinds of barriers that we have to new business, have the economic base that can afford that. But Fresno simply can't afford it. I will add to that I agree that property crimes are the great problem that is unmet and the great need that is unmet in Northwest Fresno. I hear from residents all the time when I'm walking the precincts that they don't even bother to report property crimes because they know that the police will not investigate them. And so most of those property crimes don't even go logged. We really have no idea how prevalent those crimes are. Everything from the kind of smash and grabs that Mr. Grabasi was talking about to people stealing parcels off of people's delivery or off their porches that are delivered. And in fact, I've heard a number of reports from people that there are cars that actively follow the delivery vans in Northwest Fresno and steal the parcels. One of the things that I would like to achieve as a city council member for Northwest Fresno is to have the police dedicate some investigative resources, in particular to solving that problem, so that we can identify whoever that organized group is that's going out and actively burglaring parcels from Amazon and other delivery companies.
Okay, I want to get some other views in here, so we'll have more time to talk about police services as well. Oscar, what are your thoughts on
I'd like to see
the needs in Northwest Fresno?
Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more of a presence, especially in Forgotten Fresno. That's west of the 99 where I live. Whenever I walk that area, I hear a lot from constituents that say, oh, well, police response times are slow. And they just don't feel that sense of safety that your neighborhood officer should bring. So I'd like to see that. I'm probably going to have to push for like another, like a police, like a satellite station in that area, just to increase access. Again, if something happens during rush hour, it's going to take an officer anywhere from like 20 to 40 minutes to just arrive to the scene. So we're going to need to just increase that accessibility there, whether it's doing things like changing patrol routes, putting a greater emphasis on areas where crime has been known to happen. I would also like to see some resources dedicated in that end, just because in District 2, while we may have different kinds of crimes that happen in other parts of the city, they still need to be addressed, and our citizens' voices still need to be heard.
Okay, who up here is going to support a tax increase for new police officers? Show of hands? Tax increase for new police officers?
What kind of tax increase?
You tell me. How do we fund new officers?
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. You talked about 24 million. So when Mayor Patterson and Mayor Autry, who both endorsed me, and I'm really honored to have their support, when they came in, that was a time where there were more people dying from traffic accidents than homicides in Fresno. And we didn't have the economic base for more officers. And they didn't just sit there and say, oh, well, we can't do anything. These are guys that want results. And what they did was they went after the money and they found the money and they went after federal grants. I mean, we pay so many tax dollars to the federal government. Why not get some of that money right here in Fresno? It goes to San Francisco and it goes to Los Angeles. We have one grant writer in the city of Fresno for City Hall. We need more. I mean, different departments have grant writers, but we need a person going after those grant dollars. That's
so
key.
No one raised their hand when I asked who supports a tax increase, let's say even a sales tax increase, which has been discussed possibly. So again, we need more officers. Sounds like everybody agrees with that to some level, but again, where's the money come from?
So I think we need to kind of input mandatory audits in all of the departments in the city, because recently some police officers were caught double dipping. They were caught teaching classes at Fresno City while also being on their shift. That takes a lot of money out of your pockets. So what we need to do is have audits in every department. That'll shore up a lot of cash, and we can use it to either fund new police officers, invest in our parks, or invest in other things that our city needs, like our quality roads, for example.
Okay, so there's waste in city government, so
Yeah.
we need to find where it is. Lawrence, let's get your opinion on this a little bit.
Yeah, Randy, I didn't get a chance to answer the question previous. The short answer was yes, more officers, more equipment, more tools for them to do their job. That was referring to the crime in the area. My company deals with crime on a daily basis. We are often called daily to remove homeless people from the entries of some of their offices, remove clients from the warehouses, remove them from the staircases of their buildings. So we are constantly doing that on a daily basis. My business is also called in those times when they know that law enforcement is 4 to 5, 6 hour response time. My officers have about a 5-minute response time when called within the city. And oftentimes we are actually the ones going out there because the residents or the business owners know that Fresno PD is not going to respond to some of these calls. You know, some of the, although the owner of the business or the homeowner doesn't necessarily think it's a low response, but these guys are so busy only responding to 0 and priority 1 calls. And there is not enough officers, not enough resources, not enough of the community service officers, and not even enough dispatchers to take all the calls.
So where does the money come from to hire more?
Well,
That's the bottom line.
I'm not interested in a new tax for it, but I am interested in, I have experience in bringing grants and federal funding towards different programs that we get involved in. My company is a federal contractor, and I do know avenues of how to bring some money to this city, and I am going to explore those relationships that I already have with Washington, D.C., where a lot of my business is at, and also even in Sacramento.
Okay, Jared, I think you wanted to get in on this.
I do. So I want to be clear. I will not support any new taxes. I will campaign against new taxes in the city of Fresno. We are taxed enough already. The state of California has one of the highest tax burdens of any state in the country. The city of Fresno does not need to add to that. That just hurts our prosperity, hurts our growth, and ultimately it hurts the poorest people in our communities the most. I'm especially against sales taxes because sales taxes are taxes primarily on the people where most of their money goes to consumption, and that means, again, unfortunately the poor and the working class. So we absolutely should not, as a city, adopt any additional sales tax increases. I will campaign against it. That's why having $125 million in new spending for police is a pipe dream. There are not grants for $125 million over the next 5 years for new police officers.
So how do we
It's
address
an empty
these
promise,
needs? How
right?
do we address these needs?
We have to intelligently police. We have to better use the resources we have. We have to better improve the equipment that we have so that we can use the resources that we have, gradually improve them as our economic base permits, and ultimately, through better policing, better equipment, we can make our officers more productive. Look, we already have a crime rate for violent crime that is substantially below where it was in 1990 when we had many more officers than we do on a per capita basis. So smart policing is more effective than merely adding new officers. That's what we need to do. We need to get smart.
Okay, Mike, quick comment.
Yeah, okay, so, you know, the problem isn't that we're undertaxed. Randy, the problem is government's overfunded. And that's a Reagan quote, that's not mine. And I really believe in that. I have a small business, we have a retail store. Sales tax increases hurt our customers too. But here's the thing, it is, you know, wanting you to be safe and doing whatever it takes to keep you safe, that's never an empty promise. I am the only candidate up here with the guts to sign the Safer Fresno budget pledge. No new cops, no budget. We're not going to add 200 cops overnight. That's not going to happen. But we have to show a commitment to you that we're going to find the funding, we're going to make the cuts necessary to be able to actually hire more officers to keep us safe, because the number one responsibility is safety. I'll tell you what, maybe right now public safety isn't your number one concern. But the moment you become a victim, the moment you wake up at 5 in the morning, and this happened to a resident, you wake up at 5 in the morning, go in your garage, and someone's stealing your stuff, that moment, police is going to be your number one concern. The moment you have a medical emergency and the fire department and first responders roll out because someone had a heart attack, that's when public safety is going to be your number one concern. I'm committed to making sure that the city fulfills its number one obligation of keeping you safe, and that's why I'm the only candidate endorsed by our chief, our sheriff, and supported by our DA and our police officers and firefighters.
Jared, last word, Jared.
The problem with that, Mike, is there's more to the city than just the cops in it. So we need to invest in our citizens. I'm the only candidate that's talked about investing in our parks, investing in our libraries, actually addressing the low high school graduation rate in our city. It's only about 74%. So we need to invest resources there, because then not only do we invest in our citizens and our residents, but we also invest in keeping our community safer. So if we're just saying more cops, you're just adding to the problem.
That's
we
not
need
true.
To be,
That's
we need to be,
completely
we
untrue.
need to be
No, no,
more.
no.
We need to be smarter about how we police, and we need to build those relationships.
With the resources they have, tell me how they can be smarter. No, tell me. With the resources they have a deficit in the number of officers they need. That's why I'm telling you, go out there and work with the officers and learn what they go through. Give me specific examples of how they can better.
I've been doing it all. I've been doing it the entire debate.
You've got
All right,
Smarter-
Jared, I'm
with-
going to
with-
give you
with-
40
with-
seconds
with,
here. and
with
then
respect
we'll
to
continue.
to both the police and to my fellow candidate, Mr. Kabasi, I don't think that the number of officers is the biggest need that Fresno has to deal with public safety. What we really need to do first is we need to address the crisis that we have with our 911 dispatch system, recently confirmed by a grand jury report. If you can't call the police and fire successfully, and right now people get put on hold, they go to voicemail. And if you're reporting a non-emergency crime, you might be left on hold for more than 45 minutes. If you can't reach the police or fire, it doesn't matter how many officers we have, because you'll never get through to one of them.
Okay, let's talk about the subtopic here of homelessness, which also touches on police services to a degree. Now, Jared Gordon, you've said homeless services should be available in every council district because homeless people are living in every council district. So what kinds of services should be available for homeless folks in District 2? And how will those services reduce the homeless population in your view?
Thank you for that question, Randy. So that's right. So I believe that we should treat every homeless person with dignity and expect respect for the laws that all of us follow. And in order to enforce one of our laws, the no camping ordinance, we have to provide more shelter space. The Ninth Circuit has said that's essentially an obligation based on a case against Boise. So in order to provide that shelter space, I think we can't keep doing the same old, where we put all of our services for the homeless downtown. We instead need to distribute those services to where the homeless are, which is now, unfortunately, throughout our entire city. So we need to put services available to the homeless residents in Northwest Fresno, in Northeast Fresno, in East Fresno, Southeast Fresno, et cetera, throughout the city. And the reason for that is that in talking to the actual homeless people, which I've done, homeless people in our district, they tell me that the two biggest barriers to using shelters are, first of all, that they don't have transportation to get downtown. They don't have the ability to access the shelters and the services we already have. And number two, they are afraid to lose their stuff. The shelter space that we have is frequently not secured, and there's a perception among the homeless that they will lose some or all of their stuff. And these are the poorest people in our communities. So to them, losing even a small amount of what they have is hugely impactful. So
you
we
talking
need
about
to
a
have
shelter
safe and secure shelter space
in each district?
distributed. I don't know where the sites are going to be yet. That's going to take study. Even the form of how those sites would be placed, and what kinds of sites they would be, how that shelter would be set up. I think that takes a lot more study, a lot more community input. It could be everything from an empty lot that people are allowed to camp on with some bathrooms and access to other government services and security, or it could be a converted big box store that's currently empty and maybe use the existing plumbing facilities, shower facilities, et cetera.
All right,
And
let's
I think that's
continue
an
the
efficient use of
discussion.
that
So
space.
Lawrence Garcia, you wanted to say something here?
Well, the point I want to make is that in order for us to address the homeless issue, is they call it homelessness, and my colleagues hear me say this all the time, and I'm not going to change my story. Separating the homeless people from vagrants needs to be done. Vagrants are the people that do not want to conform to any rule in any town USA. Vagrants are the ones that want to just live off the grid, not pay bills, have any responsibilities. They probably have felonies and stuff on their records that they're hiding from another part of the country. We need to address that. If they need to be arrested, then they need to be arrested. We need to focus on the people that actually want help. We have to address underlying issues, in my opinion, which is the drug addiction, the alcohol addiction, and the mental health status of these people before you can expect them to take care of a tough shed in the coldest, darkest corner of any town USA. You can't expect these people to make rational and reasonable decisions on how to make sure that tough shed is still in their possession long enough that they don't kill themselves, burn it, sell it, whatever they do. You can't expect them to have that tough shed if they don't address the underlying issues, which is the
So in
drug
order
addiction.
to do that, do you see services being located in District 2, or do you see them being centralized downtown somewhere where they've always been?
Well, currently I think we're trying to find where a place to put them. I think we need to focus the energy on where to help them, where to get them the mental health that they need, where to get them the drug addiction and the alcohol addiction out of their lives so they can make good decisions to go to a shelter, whether it's spread out over the different districts or if it's centrally located. That's what my point is.
Okay, Mike Carvasi?
I want to make one thing really clear. I do not support building a homeless shelter in Northwest Fresno, and we'll get into why. So we have, Fresno County is one of the highest rates of unsheltered homeless people in the country. This past year, these are chronically homeless people. This past year, the point in time count said there's a 23% increase. That doesn't include the working homeless, people living in their cars, students that are couch surfing. These are people that, I mean, they're real, they want to work, and they just unfortunately, for whatever reason, ended up homeless. And you know, it's a very, very complex issue. It's really important we elect someone who has the leadership qualities to collaborate with others, because there are people that deal with this every day. I've met with HPs with the mayor's office. I've met with the housing authority. I've met with Breaking the Chains. I've met with the people from the Continuum of Care, with Marjorie Mason, because they help victims of domestic violence that end up homeless. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to forget about the root causes, and you know, the other candidate did mention that. You know, there is drug addiction, alcohol abuse, but there's also other factors like mental health, and this is a state crisis. I'm going to lobby our state elected officials to really do something about mental health services in this state, because we're dealing it with here locally.
How about in Fresno, though? I mean, where do people go for those services? Where do you see them going?
Great question. Where the services are located right now, a lot of those services just happen to be in the downtown area. They are building facilities and beds. Turning Point's doing one at a former hotel. So we need to talk to the experts. Now, I've spoken to them. None of them have said, oh, let's build one in downtown Fresno, or let's build one in Northwest Fresno or Northeast Fresno. I'm not going to tell the experts that they're wrong, and I don't get that logic. It's irresponsible to have the added cost of transportation by putting it in Northwest Fresno. Our residents don't want that, and I work for you. I'm responsible to you.
Oscar, you have a thought on this issue?
So, like I said earlier, Fresno's population is growing, and I think that if we want to be realistic about dealing with the homeless crisis, we're going to need to actively address it. So, you know, I kind of get this response all the time from constituents whose doors I knock on. You know, we're probably going to need a shelter in the district sooner rather than later. They get nervous about it, understandably so. The thing is, would you rather have them walking around in your neighborhood or in a place where they can actually go that's close by, where we can actually, you know, save on transportation costs and do things like that? Furthermore, we need to be realistic about what's causing the homelessness issue. It's the city's problem with meth and with drugs. So I'm the only candidate that's proposing a multi-pronged plan that actually, you know, addresses with every part of this issue. So we need to open up more resources for mental health. I'm the only candidate that's actually worked in mental health. We need to actually give these people more resources for rehab. We can't just give them housing and expect them to actually, you know, address this problem. No, we need to give them a stake in the equation. So, along with that, we need to give them job training and allow them to reintegrate themselves into society. Because furthermore, another thing that we're not really addressing is the 21st century of it all. I heard the story when I was talking to a constituent about a homeless person who they didn't have an email address. And if you don't have an email address nowadays, you can't really apply for a job. Well, they wanted to take a cell phone number, didn't have a cell phone. So we're going to need not only that, but like digital training for homelessness people and
and services should be provided in the district for folks to access
because we need
those.
we need to be proactive.
Jared had a comment here, and then Mike, and then we'll move on.
The people of Northwest Fresno should understand that there isn't really a choice about whether there are going to be homeless people in Northwest Fresno. There are homeless people in Northwest Fresno. They live on the railroad tracks that are right near my house. They live behind the old AAA on Shaw, which I helped a resident with not very long ago. They live all up and down Blackstone on the eastern edge of the district. They live throughout Northwest Fresno. And so the question is not, are we going to have homeless residents in Northwest Fresno? It's, are we going to have a place, a shelter for homeless residents in Northwest Fresno? Or are we going to have no shelter and then just homeless residents sleeping where they are today? So that's really the choice. The choice is not, are we going to build a shelter in Northwest Fresno? It's, are we going to have the status quo? Or are we going to find a place where they can go that's safe and secure and where the police can say, your choice is to go to the safe and secure shelter, or we will arrest you because you are trespassing on someone's
We're going to talk about
property.
that just like 15 seconds, Mike. We need to move
For the
on.
voters, you need to tell people before elections held where you're going to actually locate these things. They have a right to know. But what I'll say this. There is a plan. The experts, you know what they want? They want to stop the influx of homelessness. They want to have triage centers, preferably where there are services. They want bridge housing. This is something I got from Mayor Kevin Faulkner of San Diego. They've been very successful in dealing with that. And after bridge housing, the goal is permanent housing back on their feet, and those with mental health issues, get them the services that they can deal with their chronic illness.
Thanks,
The problem
Mike.
with
Let's.
that, though, is we need to actually, address people where they are. Again, we've been talking about transportation. That might not be a realistic thing for a lot of people because we're just, shoving the homeless people downtown. We need to be concerned about every part of the city. So we need to meet people where they are.
Speaking of people where they are, so show of hands, and I think I know some of you, but who supports this Fresno's anti-camping ordinance? Show of hands.
Which one?
The anti-camping ordinance. Okay, so 3 of the 4 of you. So as most people know, it makes setting up a homeless campsite punishable by 6 months in jail and possibly a $1,000 fine on top of that. Only about 15 arrests were made last year under the anti-camping ordinance. So should the police be arresting more homeless people? Jared, what about that?
So what I would like to have, as I've expressed previously, is that we should have a carrot and a stick approach to dealing with homeless people who are trespassing on other people's property. Now, I'm not allowed to trespass on other people's property and sleep on their doorsteps or sleep in their yards. And that's true for everyone else in our society. We need to equally apply the rule of law to everyone. Now, that said, we need to give options to the homeless people so that their choices are not, I'm going to break the law here or I'm going to break the law there. We have to give them that option. In fact, the Ninth Circuit has even said we have to provide that option if we're going to enforce our no camping ordinance.
And is it
so
working?
that is, well, it isn't because we don't have the shelter space. We have not committed as a city, as a region at all the different levels of government to building out the kinds of shelter space, additional services, transition services that we need to do. We have started on that with the continuum of care following the Salt Lake City model, but the Salt Lake City model has failed to deal with all kinds of homeless, particularly those who have chronic homelessness caused by mental disorders, by substance abuse, and overlapping self-medication for the same. So Salt Lake City does not have all the solutions either. It's a great first start. It works well for the economically homeless. And I mean, we should certainly build on that, but it is not the only solution, nor is it indeed the principal solution to homelessness in our community.
Okay. Mike Carbazzi, you say you support the anti-camping ordinance. Is it working?
Well, you know what? Here's the problem. Here's why it got created. People are frustrated. My small business, I've had homeless people camp in front of my business, defecate. It's reality. And guess who has to clean it up? I'm not going to make my dad do it. But that kind of stuff is really frustrating. It does not mean we do not care and have compassion. A lot of people have compassion, but they're frustrated. And I got to mention one thing about, this homeless shelter idea. The experts don't want it. Residents don't want it. It's not fiscally responsible. So why are we even talking about it? But when it comes to no camping ordinance, I look forward to the day where we don't need to use it anymore. But we're going to have to listen to the experts that deal with homelessness every day and do what they think is necessary. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a silver bullet. There's going to be so many things like Dakota Eco Garden. It's going to be what Turning Point is doing. It's going to be working with West Care, Marjorie Mason. These are the folks we should be asking this question.
Lawrence Garcia, why is the anti-camping ordinance a good idea? Why should we keep it and keep it in effect?
Well, I think it's a great idea. As a matter of fact, you started the question with should law enforcement be arresting homeless people? And my answer to that is if they are camping in a spot they shouldn't be, if they have a arrest record, this long, and our officers encounter them doing something they're not supposed to be doing, like camping in an inappropriate place, then I definitely say they should be arrested. That arrest will also start the treatment process if this person wants to get himself treated. We have to funnel them to the services that they need. Again, that's back to the drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and the mental health. And if it starts with an arrest in an inappropriate camping site, then that's where it starts.
Oscar Sandoval, is the no camping ordinance having the desired effect?
So, Randy, you said it yourself, 15 arrests in a year? Come on. With my homelessness plan, we would actually address that number, and we'd actually give people the means to, reintegrate themselves into society so they don't have to camp out anywhere. The thing is, in terms of talking to the experts, I've talked to those same people, I've talked to more people about it. We need to be proactive about how we're going to address the problem citywide. If we don't prepare for it now, the city's population is going to grow out of control. And if we have poor planning, then homeless people are going to be everywhere and not be present in the city. So we need to actually give them the means to help themselves out now and not criminalize poverty, because that's what we're doing. That's what the anti-camping ordinance does. So we need to give these people a place to go, a place where they can, again, get job training, get mental health help, get rehab help, and then get back into the work on their feet.
I don't think anyone is against wanting to be proactive and actually reduce the problem. One thing I encourage, this is such an important issue, the one document I brought with myself was created by Barbara Poppy, and it was commissioned by the City of Fresno and the Housing Authority. It's called the Street to Home Framework for Action. I welcome all the candidates to read this. This is knowledge. These are what the experts have concluded is necessary for Fresno. Please, if you haven't read it, I'll give you a copy. You have? Good. Sam, that's good. It's really important to understand the lack of affordable housing we have, the influx of homelessness. Look, you don't need a politician to solve this problem. You need people in the trenches dealing with it, and you need the politicians giving them the ability and get out of the way so they can do what they need to do.
Mike, I'm glad you mentioned affordable housing. We're going there
All right.
next. Fresno's general plan calls for a diversity of housing types across the city, from single-family homes to multifamily apartments. Now, recently, the city's Planning Commission rejected a proposed apartment development in District 2 near Grantland and Barstow, I believe it was, after neighbors complained about anticipated traffic increases, possible crime problems, and their belief that their home values would decline if an apartment complex was built in their neighborhood. Now, Lawrence Garcia, you were on the Planning Commission when that vote was taken, and you voted against the apartment development. So I'd like to know, did you share the concerns of neighbors in that area that their property values would decline?
Well, that's an interesting one to bring up, because some people like to use that vote as me not being business friendly on the Planning Commission. And I could tell you that vote, I am the most business friendly planning commissioner during that time I was on. In that particular case that you're talking about, there was probably 30 people at City Hall, signs and everything else opposing that, the new development over there. They said, hey, not enough infrastructure. The roads are not wide, and one lane roads going both ways. And they talked about all the problems that we are all very well aware of. And the one issue that I brought up that made me vote no on it was because during the time I worked for American Ambulance, getting an ambulance on that side of the freeway, where sometimes we were waiting for a train or sometimes we were waiting for just the backup of traffic, and an ambulance couldn't get to that 911 call. Even if they get to the 911 call, it was on the way back to the hospital. I voted that down because we cannot allow that area to continue to grow without making the roads appropriate for not only the residents there, but for medical and fire services.
So
law
under what
enforcement.
conditions would you approve multifamily development in District 2?
For sure, I support multiple businesses want to do, companies want to do housing over there. But again, the roads have to be correctly widened, the sidewalks, the lighting, the stripes, everything that goes into it. The
Fully built out.
Fully built out.
Okay. Jared Gordon?
So I believe that in order to solve our housing affordability problems, we have to say yes to housing of all kinds, single-family homes, multifamily homes, tiny homes, mixed use, and we have to be flexible about where all of that goes. My view as this particular project is that if we could mitigate the traffic problems, if the developer was going to mitigate the traffic problems, and that is a whole separate and important conversation to have, particularly about how we get west of 99 and the traffic problems facing our two main access points to west of 99 in Northwest Fresno. But if we could mitigate those traffic problems, then we should say yes. In fact, I think as a community, we must say yes to housing everywhere that we can build it, because we need more housing in this community. We need to increase the supply so we can lower the cost for people. That's one of the things that we can do to help reduce economic homelessness. One of the most important things, frankly, that we can do to reduce economic homelessness is to simply increase the supply of housing to bring down the cost. Now, I will say that there are a couple of communities in the city where I think that there are historic reasons why maybe they should have particular development patterns. Pinedale, for example, has a particular historic environment that I think it's worth protecting. The same is true of the Tower District. There's probably one or two other places in town where I think preserving that historic character makes sense, but in general, the city should say yes to new housing, new development, wherever it can.
Oscar Sandoval, where do we locate multifamily apartments in District 2?
So we need to look all over the district because there is a lot of land there, especially where I live west of 99. We need to be creative in the way that we address this problem because right now we don't have the supply to meet the demand. So again, we need to look at solutions at lower costs, open up to multi or single unit family housing. Again, I'm the only candidate that's really talking about the future of our city. Millennials are getting married way later in life. So we need to kind of cater to that future. Not only that, but we also need to consider our seniors. Right now, with the lack of senior housing, we need to consider people at all stages of life. So once we do that, we'll be able to adequately address the housing issue. But not only that, we need to be considerate of our planning as well, because the last thing you want is just housing out in the middle of nowhere with no access to anything. I personally live in a unit and in a house where the only thing close to us is a 24-hour gas station. We need to give people more options. We need to give them a stake in their neighborhood, and also work with business people here in the city to actually expand and do so in a responsible way.
But do you agree that multifamily apartments should only be built where there's fully built out infrastructure? I mean, in the city of Fresno, a lot of times those new development projects will pay for the infrastructure later. The city of Fresno doesn't have the money to invest the money up front. So how do you solve that conundrum?
I think we're probably gonna have to look into something like a matching program where we kind of meet the developers where they are. Because the thing is, we don't want one side leveraging control over the other, because then nothing gets done. So what we're gonna have to do is, again, just meet in the middle a little bit. And if it comes to a specific project where sometimes you have to pay later, sometimes you can pay now, we're gonna have to do that because we have to prepare for the problem now, or else we're just gonna see an increase in our homelessness population. And we're gonna lose more qualified people to like your LAs, your San Franciscos, because jobs and housing will be elsewhere.
Mike Arbasi, your response to multifamily housing developments
Let's address the
impact
first part
property
Let's address the first part of
values?
your question. This is one of the reasons why I gave the rating of a 5. It's because of people who make bad decisions. Now, let me give you the full story of what happened. We were going to build in the
In a
west.
minute.
Okay, in the west area of the 99, a place that really needs investment. It's a chicken and the egg kind of a thing. In order to have infrastructure, you're going to have someone come and invest. A local investor wanted to build housing so our families can have access to something they can afford. Now, the city, for 8 months, worked with this person. They worked with the residents. They evaluated all the feedback from residents and mitigated. And there were 2 items on the agenda. And if you read the agenda, you'll see that staff mitigated all the concerns residents had. 30 people show up, and he flips his vote and kills the project. That's a fundamental difference between Lawrence Garcia and Mike Carbasi. 100 people show up. I'm going to stick to my values, and that's my promise to Northwest Fresno.
Lawrence Garcia, any response?
He wasn't there. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I can read, though.
I'm glad. There were at least 30 residents there with signs, with their concerns, and every one of those concerns that they brought up has been brought up every time another developer or another entity was coming in there. Again, I wasn't getting in the way of business. I was getting in the way of the fact that the residents have clearly showed the roads, the widening of the roads, the lighting, any of the issues that they need to have for that to be a safe and workable neighborhood for ambulance, fire, law enforcement, and people to get around. That had to have been done first before they can continue to
Staff
add
already
more
did
to
that.
it.
There's a reason why our ambulances are posted throughout this city to reduce those response times. That's just not an accurate statement, okay? Look, the fact of the matter is you can't call yourself business friendly when you flip your vote and kill a project.
Last word, Lawrence Garcia, and then we'll move on.
I had 5 years as a businessman, the most business-friendly planning commissioner on that panel over the last 5 years, and they're going to take one vote and make that be my record. That's ridiculous.
Well, you quit after that.
My record stands for itself, and that's where I stand on that.
All right, let's talk about building Fresno's economic footprint. So Fresno has been knocked for decades for not being sufficiently business friendly. A couple of you have used that term already. Raise your hand if you believe the city is stifling businesses. All 4. Okay, wow, 5. All right. So some people have said that it's a culture problem among city employees, that that's where the issue lies. So what's your assessment of what is causing this lack of business-friendly activity in City Hall, and what do we do about it? So Mike, go ahead, jump in.
I'm not going to, and for a good reason, I'm not going to criticize our city employees. I think it's a leadership issue. You know, we've lost so many staff members to Caltrans and Clovis because we're not very competitive. And our general plan really isn't growth friendly. It wants to dictate what the market should do. And I'm very concerned about that. So, you know, I think it's a lot of things we need to work on, but the number one issue is knowing we want qualified people at City Hall. We want you come into City Hall. Look, you ever order, I think I mentioned this last time, you order a pizza from Domino's, for example, and you know, you can track your order, and we're starting to it's called Excella, we're starting to actually ramp up this program. But it'd be nice if everybody who goes to City Hall that wants to get a permit can actually track their order so there's more accountability. City Hall has to work for you. For 40 years, my family's had a business in Northwest Fresno, and we've been very lucky. I want other people to have that same fortune.
So we don't have the right people at City Hall, is that what you're saying?
We have a lot of good people. We want to get more good people at City Hall.
Okay, Jared Gordon?
So I'll say that culture is part of the problem, but it is not every person, certainly at City Hall, that has a culture that doesn't meet good customer service expectations. But there are certainly some people in planning where I've heard reports about them. I work with planning as part of my legal practice to help some of my clients with real estate deals that they're working on. And some of the people in planning are excellent and have done really great work with me and some of my clients on conditional use permits. So certainly there are good people there, but there are some people who are not so willing to be customer friendly. But I think more importantly, we have a set of procedures and especially a development code that is highly unfriendly to business, that is highly prescriptive, meaning it tells our people what to do. And I don't think that's what City Hall should be in the business of doing. We should be in the business of protecting our people, helping our people, and coordinating our city. We should not be in the business of telling businesses that have been there for 50 years they have to shut down if they change their tenants. And that's what happened to businesses on Kings Canyon and Belmont, and probably will happen to some of the businesses in some of the older parts of Northwest Fresno because of our new development code. Now, I sat in on all of the development code meetings for commercial and industrial developers. I've read the whole development code. I was part of that whole process. And when the city council decided to adopt the development code, I went and spoke against it because I could see what the problems were going to be with the development code. Unfortunately, the city council approved it and ignored my advice, and exactly the problems that I saw that would occur with existing businesses happened, and they happened within a year. So we need to be more business friendly. And when I say that, it involves not just a culture change, not just to change it in internal City Hall processes, but we have to change the laws that govern business. And as an attorney who deals with those laws all the time, I'm uniquely well suited to fix that
All
problem.
right, let's move on. Lawrence Garcia?
Yeah, when we talk about business friendly, you know, when you have half of the system is going to using the internet now to fill out the paperwork and the applications and all these different things, submitting things half online, the other half is the draconian paperwork process that they have. And then when that paper gets turned in, where does it go? It goes on the top of someone's pile, and they'll eventually get to that pile. But my point I'm trying to make is we can't have half online, half paperwork set up. We have to look at how many documents it takes to get a yes or no answer on something. How many fees does it really cost this much in fees? Does it really take 6 to 9 weeks for this, for that? My point is that I think that we really need to readdress how the information is received, how many hands have to go into it before they can give it a yes or a no, and look at the cost of doing business, lowering fees to encourage more businesses coming here. You know, Fresno will bring up their tax base as soon as they start attracting more businesses, larger businesses like the Ultas and the Amazons, but even smaller ones than that. But also, in order to attract more business and more revenue for the city, the neighborhoods have to look good. The neighborhoods have to be desirable and want people to move into them. They can't have cars parking on the grass. You can't have sidewalks pushed up.
Let's stay with the process a little bit about making Fresno more business friendly and dealing with regulations and plans and things like that. So earlier in the year, the city moved ahead with the money back guarantee program, right? Refunds fees to developers, potentially in the tens of thousands of dollars if city staff is late on meeting deadlines. So do you support this approach even if it costs the city much needed tax and fee revenue? Oscar, you didn't get in on the last one, so let me ask you that question.
So to address the first question, I think we need to invest in our citizens primarily. You know, we have things like Bitwise that are kind of, and now starting here in Fresno, expanding to the rest of the valley. We're the 5th largest city in California, but I'm just going to say we don't act like it. So what we need to do is kind of embrace the future, embrace those different kinds of jobs, whether it's looking at like a subsidy to start a business here in the city for our residents. We need to increase the relationship with the unions that our city has. Traditionally, when you do that, you get money that stays here in the economy. You get people that stay here in the city, and you just get a higher quality of work. And that's what we all want. That's what we all want at the end of the day. To answer your second question,
Money back guarantee.
I want things to be done on time, but I also I don't like waste. So I think we're gonna have to look at a different solution for that.
Okay.
But that'll be something I look more into.
Mike Carbasi?
You know, I'm all about accountability. I'm all about being very, very careful how we spend the money of the hardworking taxpayers of Fresno. Now, I'm a business owner. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one up here that actually had to pull a conditional use permit from the city of Fresno, and I know how frustrating it can be. I do support the money back guarantee. In fact, I went to the council and spoke in favor of it. Now, I want you to know, though, anytime any money goes back to a developer or just, you know, any person who because of the fault of the city they're late, the city council actually approves that. So it's not just given back to them instantly. And I can tell you, people that invest in these communities and create these jobs and the workers that work on those jobs, they want people that are actually business friendly and aren't going to kill projects. So they're willing to actually do more. They don't want the money back. They want their projects approved. And that's what we need to do. But we have to have the city be accountable to them.
Jared Gordon, money back guarantee, good idea, bad idea?
So in its original form, I didn't think that the money back guarantee went far enough. My personal preference would have been that if projects weren't approved on time, that they were automatically approved in many circumstances. I think that, however, that the revised money back guarantee, as the council has fixed it, is definitely good and is worth supporting. But I want to add to it. And so I'll tell you what I want to add. What I think will make the money back guarantee work more effectively is if we make everything that's by right, that's essentially everything that you're allowed to do under the development code without having to get a conditional use permit or other kinds of higher level sign off. All of that should be done without any permits. We need to eliminate permitting, eliminate all those rubber stamps that we put on permits right now from the planning department for all the things that you get to do by law. Because building and occupying new businesses and new housing developments is one of the few things where you have to ask permission ahead of time instead of being able to just follow the law as it is. So that's the change that we need to make. We need to stop being in this permission-oriented environment, get to a permissionless environment where anytime that you get to do something by right, as long as you have a licensed professional who can help you with it, that you just get to do it. And you have to run it by building to make sure that it's safe, and ultimately it'll get inspected, which inspections are another problem that we should talk about. But we don't need to have a rubber stamp from planning on those projects. And if we get rid of that additional work, we can make money back guarantee work.
I want to follow up with you on that. You're talking about the general plan with those regulations and requirements and standards, et cetera. Now, the city of Fresno spent months and months and months, possibly even years, meeting with the community, trying to develop the new general plan. They came up with a plan. It was approved by the city council. You're saying it's a mess. So the community was wrong in the decisions that it made in approving the general plan?
I want to make an important distinction. So there are two related documents here. There's the general plan, that's sort of a map of what people envision the city would look like. And it's a beautiful vision in many ways. I think especially the mixed use opportunities have a great future for Fresno. Where I think the plan turns into a nightmare is the development code, which again, I think I'm the only one here who's read. And the development code is incredibly specific about what has to be done at every different possible zoning level. It limits what people can do with their property in hundreds of ways, including even what kinds of signage they can put up and where, what kinds of architecture they can display against the street. To me, these kinds of things are ridiculous. And more importantly, there are a whole lot of things that it says you get to do, but it doesn't let you do them unless someone rubber stamps your request to do them. You should not have to ask permission to renovate your own kitchen. You shouldn't ask permission to be able to build out a new commercial business in an existing commercial business structure. These are just things you should get to do as long as you're safe and you follow the law. If you don't follow the law and you have to fix something, that's your problem, and you should be willing to own up to that. That's the way everything else in life works, except in this bizarre world of planning where we make people sign off and get rubber stamps ahead of time. We need to end the rubber stamp culture of City Hall.
Mike, go ahead.
Regarding the general plan, I happen to know a District 2 resident who's a very nice person who was actually involved in that process. His name is Randy Reed. And it's not that, we don't appreciate and respect the hard work you've done. And there are so many components of the plan that are good, but things have changed. Our economy is booming. There is a lot more emphasis on the need for affordable housing. We talked about where affordable housing be located in District 2. Well, there's a West Area Steering Committee that came up with a new plan on how they want to plan Forgotten Fresno. One idea, and this is part of smart planning, let's locate a lot of those multifamily properties near the catalytic corridor so that people can get to El Paseo Shopping Center or they can get to work faster. It also reduces the impact of stop and go traffic and stop pollution. I just think that things have changed, and there are quite a few of us out there. I know Councilmember Luis Chavez is really concerned about this too, where we can actually look and make sure our general plan works for us. There's nothing wrong with revisiting it.
Okay. Oscar Sandoval, what do you think of the general plan as it is now?
So, and this is kind of going back to the culture as well, we're going to have to revisit it and just look for the ways that we can modernize it. Again, I guess my pie in the sky vision would be to see like a park in every neighborhood, or a neighborhood with sidewalks that are high quality and streets that are high quality, because right now we don't have that. So we need to prepare for the future. So that is giving access to businesses, making it so varied businesses, preferably local ones, can actually build in our city. We need to invest in our unions, because that will lead to higher quality work, and that'll be more money in the local economy. And we need to open up the different types of housing. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of work to get to a plan that actually works for all of us. But I'm the only candidate with a public policy background, I can get it done.
Lawrence Garcia, as a member of the Planning Commission for a number of years, you helped implement the general plan. So what are your views on it? Are we overregulated?
Well, how long did it take to get this plan? Some would talk about 50 years before it was revised. And I know that there was a huge pressure from all angles to get something new, get something more updated, and we did that. And I think in general it was great. I understand that the development code is still being challenged, and that was part of the way they made it. So it can be modified along the way. So when we going back to the money back guarantee, I think I like the idea outside the box thinking of terms of trying to incentivize people to be faster and get the job done sooner. But again, I'm also going back to, if we streamline the operation, lessen the paperwork process that needs to be gone through just to get something done, I think is where you're going to see that it would change, and we may not have to give that money back guarantee because we can get it done in a more streamlined, faster way.
Okay, thank you all. Oscar Sandoval, you've mentioned a couple of times union activity and union participation, how important you feel that is. So let's talk about that a little bit. The City Council recently shifted from its previous and long-held position and entered into a union-backed project labor agreement for a couple of large construction projects, including one at the Fresno Airport. PLAs, as they're called, require all contractors on a project to work through local unions to hire labor. And that contractors adhere to union work rules. Supporters say PLAs ensure labor peace, and they help deliver projects on time and at a higher quality. I believe you made that case earlier as well. Opponents say PLAs drive up costs and they limit contractor flexibility. So who's right?
I would side with the unions again, just because we want that local quality. We want people that are actually going to use these facilities, use our airport to build it, because that's how you ensure a higher level of care. Again, the biggest point of that is we get money from those projects that actually stays in the city. When you hire outside help, that money goes elsewhere, and we don't benefit from it. So not only that, but when you have a project that is peaceful, as the term is, things tend to go a lot smoother, and we can actually, again, benefit it locally. We don't want money from a project that is meant for Fresno to be spent elsewhere.
Okay, Mike Carrossi, are union-backed project labor agreements the right direction for Fresno?
Well, let's clarify a couple things. So the last PLA vote the City Council took passed unanimously. So all the council members voted for it, including the North Fresno council members. That's significant. So I think, and I think it's correct. We want to not only buy local, we want to build local too. And just because you have a PLA and it's union labor, that doesn't mean that a private sector contractor can't bid on that project. They can bid on that project. It is open to them too. But we have to look at these things on a case-by-case basis. Here's the question. Is it good for my district? Is it good for the city? If we can answer those questions in the affirmative, then why shouldn't we try to focus on something that actually is going to help? Now, I know some people are going to say there was a police station that was built in Selma, and that was way over. That's not Fresno, that's Selma. I don't know how their council works. I just know how we work here in Fresno. I come from a business background. I have to take care of my customers. I want to do things. Again, I respect I believe in the responsibility of our hard-working taxpayer dollars, spending it right, and I'm going to look at any plan, and I'm going to look at the same way that Councilmember Brandow and Bredefeld voted for PLAs. I'm going to look at that too and see what's best for Fresno.
Okay, Lawrence Garcia, it's a new direction in the city of Fresno. Do you support it or disagree with it? Public,
I don't.
Project labor agreements.
No, I don't.
You don't support them?
No, I think we should go after the most qualified, the most best value contractor for the job.
I think the problem there is, though, you don't get the best value for the job because someone might cut corners or, again, even worse, we need to keep money here in the city. So if we hire outside contractors to do local jobs, that ultimately doesn't benefit us as much as it should. So we need to have PLAs, but we also need to make sure that they're altered in a way that doesn't ignore things like women-owned firms because, again, that has been a problem. Or minority-owned firms because that's been another problem with PLAs. So we need to address them and write them in a way that is both good for our local economy, but also doesn't ignore any of our local contractors.
Jared Gordon, where do you come down on this issue?
I think it's ridiculous to claim that our local non-union contractors are any less capable, any less qualified, and build any worse product than local union contractors or out-of-town contractors. We, as stewards of the taxpayers' money, should provide the best value for every contract that we enter into on behalf of the city. That's our obligation as city council members. And so my view on project labor agreements is, though I am generally against them, if there is a project labor agreement that's required for a project, for example, for grant money, and it is both fair to union and non-union contractors and treats them on a level playing field, I think that's okay. We should allow them to be treated fairly and equally because that's what we as citizens should deserve and expect from our city, that we will treat union and non-union shops equally. We should not be in a position where, as mayoral candidate Jans suggested, we adopt a union-only project labor agreement for anything. That is simply cutting out dozens, if not hundreds, of local businesses in Fresno from being able to bid on that project, and it ultimately means that we, the taxpayers, will pay more for the same level of quality.
Half of my employees are union. I have both union contracts and non-union contracts. I negotiate union contracts regularly. The fact is that PLAs hurt, and the best value, best qualified is how we should do business.
The problem is it hasn't been that way historically. Union work is the work that's going to stay and benefit us the most. So we need to, again, have these PLAs in place, but write them in a way that allows opportunities for everyone. So, again, we need to keep that money here locally.
And Mike, 15,
This is
20
not
seconds.
a union issue. We need to stop that whole thing about being a union issue, okay? This is about what's best for Fresno and trying things different. It's good to know, though, these two guys are not going to vote like Steve Brandow voted. That's been established right now on this last PLA vote. But what I want to say is most qualified, absolutely most qualified. You know, to become an apprentice and actually become a journeyman, you have to go through 5 years of intensive training, on-the-job training. I encourage you guys, go visit the plumbers, go visit the electrical workers, go visit the people they work for and actually talk to them. Don't just come up here and say something. Look, I met a guy, he had been in prison for 20 years in Fresno, in the state of California. And he came out of prison and he's doing a pre-apprenticeship program. This guy and his family's there and supporting him, and he's a part of that minority that 28% that doesn't go back to prison. So these jobs that we create here can actually give opportunity and prevent homelessness. It can also keep our dollars local so we can fund more police officers and fund more parks. I want to keep our dollars local. I want to be the best steward of your taxpayer dollars. And just because something may seem politically inconvenient doesn't mean I'm going to turn a blind eye to it. What's important is how are we going to get things built responsibly for the best overall effect for Fresno.
Let's talk about stewardship of taxpayer dollars a little bit more. As the District 2 council member, whichever of you is elected, you represent Northwest Fresno, of course, but you're also one of 7 on the city council responsible for the direction of the entire city. So recently there was a dust-up, I think it was back in April, over the mayor's spending plan for what, $12 million in state gas tax dollars. The money was divided up for road and other infrastructure projects among the 7 council districts. District 2 received the least of that allocation, with more money going to older areas of the city, and some people would say more needy areas of the city. Oscar Sandoval, you've said one of your goals as a council member, if you're elected, would be to get more resources for District 2. Yep. So, should future monies like that just be divided equally among all 7 council districts, regardless of any other needs in the city?
So, we need to kind of take a realistic approach at things like this. As District 2's councilman, I need to do what's best for the district. Again, when I say improve resources, I mean improve our parks, improve our libraries, and kind of change the way that are used and to make them more dynamic. I would fight for every dollar I can for the city, or for our district, but the thing is, there are more parts of the city that are in more need, and that's the unfortunate reality. When we realize that our fates are interconnected, then we'll start to see that there might be some budgets where District 2 needs a little less. There might be somewhere we need a little bit more. The thing is, it's more about spending that money responsibly, and that would be something I do. I would actively engage with the citizens of District 2, as I've already been doing for months now, and see what the problems are and see how I can best spend the money that we do get.
Mike Arbasi,
Can you ask that question again? It's kind of long.
Sure, I was just asking about the distribution of state tax, gas tax dollars back in April, and whether or not those funds in the future should just be divided equally among 7 council districts and move on, or should
if
older
it's
areas
divided
get more?
equally, we're actually still getting a bad deal, but I want to be fair. Here's the thing. We pay so much taxes, sales tax and property tax that goes to the city. Northwest Fresno, as well as District 6 and District 4, we pay about 70 to 80% of the city's tax base. We're actually subsidizing other neighborhoods, and that's okay. We're not complaining about that. But don't shortchange us, okay? Drive down Barstow, and you'll see what a pothole is really like. Look at our sidewalks. Look at the condition of the west area, for example. And I know, you can laugh at that. I work for District 2. I care about our city. I'm passionate about our city. But I was born and raised in this district. You better believe I'm going to put our district first. That's my responsibility.
Okay, Jared Gordon?
I support objective measures for allocating the gas tax funds, but I think it's also important that we understand what those objective measures are and make sure that those objective measures do not shortchange Northwest Fresno. One of the problems that I saw in the way in which the administration allocated SB1 funds is that it didn't really put enough money towards dealing with some of the significant traffic problems that face Northwest Fresno. In particular, although there is some money for improving the Sean Polk intersection, it is hardly enough to do the major overhaul that's necessary to fix what is probably the worst impacted traffic intersection in the entire city. There's really nothing that went towards fixing the Grantland-Herndon 99 intersection. There's nothing that went towards fixing Audubon, Palm, and Nees. And so while we need to work on street maintenance, we need to also think about traffic, and we need to get away from our obsession in our overall transportation dollars with expanding bike lanes, with expanding mass transit, where we've had declining ridership since 2000. We need to instead prioritize the way in which people in Fresno actually get around, which is largely by car. And so I think if we focus our efforts towards what people actually do with their lives and focus our dollars towards where people actually go in their cars, we will have a much more successful policy for how we deal with our gas taxes.
Okay, Lawrence Garcia, what are your thoughts on the division of gas tax dollars in the future?
Yeah, so, I would run my district, District 2, as I run my businesses. Those other districts already get more money than we do in many cases. And then we're often being pooled our money from District 2 into the other districts. We cannot have that. We have to protect the money that comes to us, use it wisely, run this district like a business. I don't see why we can't run our cities more like businesses. If the business is profitable, this community to be profitable, we have to protect that money. Too many times that money's getting pulled to other districts, and I would fight for that money. I'm fighting for District 2, and I would protect that money just like I protect the money within my own businesses.
Just on the mindset alone, though, we need to be a little bit more considerate on how we actually run the district, because at the end of the day, the District 2 council member position is one, it's not a business. You're not a CEO of anything. You are there for the residents first. That's something that I would do. I have to, invest in what's best for them. Just coming in with it's a business-like mentality, that's not going to work for every resident in the district. So I would always work with what's best for the residents in mind.
Now, the
Mike,
premise of this question is who's actually going to work hardest for Northwest Fresno. So we know if 31 people show up to the council meeting, he's going to flip his vote if they're from District 7. So I just want to make it clear. My priority is you. I have the values. I was raised with our Northwest Fresno values. I am going to stand strong, and I'm going to make sure that we take care of our city, but I take care of you first.
All right, so Steve Brandel, one of your predecessors on the city council, kind of took the position that Northwest Fresno District 2 was getting shortchanged in the gas tax allocation. So I want to ask you, what differentiates you from Steve Brandel? Either which ways do you kind of agree with his way of representing Northwest Fresno, and which ways would you be different from Steve Brandel? So let me start with you, Jared.
Well, I'm going to expand this beyond just the transportation question, if you don't mind. So Steve is a friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. And although we have similar principles in that we believe in limited government, fiscal responsibility, and free market solutions is usually the first best solutions for most problems, Steve and I have some differences in rhetoric and maybe some differences on emphasis. So I'm a big believer in looking at best practices and looking at the way in which other cities have done things successfully. That would include on how to allocate transportation dollars. I'm also a big believer that if you get down into the nitty-gritty of processes and ordinances and the way in which individual lines of text are written in the law, sometimes that's where big changes can happen from those small details. Maybe that comes from my attorney training. But I think that transportation funding is one thing where it's very much about those details of exactly what measures are being looked at, and also how we assess whether or not money really benefits the district. So as an example of that, going back to Sean Polk, so at the Sean Polk intersection, none of the monies that are being spent on the Sean Polk intersection are credited to District 2 because they happen to be spent on the part of the part of Polk that is south of Shaw. But they will benefit the people of District 2. They'll frankly benefit Oscar Sandoval individually. And that's great, and it should be that way. So we do need to think as a city collectively, particularly when it comes to transportation, but we need to be thoughtful about how we measure those metrics so that we fairly treat all of our citizens, and in particular, the people of Northwest Fresno.
Mike Carbasi, how will you be the same, and how will you be different from Steve Brandel?
Okay, I'm going to try to answer the question. I don't want to focus on the past. I want to focus on the future. I'll be the first councilman in 20 years elected that's actually from Northwest Fresno. So I give everyone my cell phone number, 601-0564. Please don't prank call me. And the reason I do that is I want to have neighborhood meetings regularly. I want to engage with the community. I don't want our district split in two with the west area and the rest of the district. I want us to be one Northwest Fresno. I cherish our neighborhoods. When people drive into Northwest Fresno, I want them to feel welcome, whether they want to open a business or they want to live there or they're coming to visit family. So I'm focused on the future. Being accessible is extremely important, but you know what? The next council member is going to have to work with Steve Brandel because he's our supervisor. I've met with Steve on multiple occasions. I can work with anybody. We can disagree. It's fair. This is a democracy. We are supposed to disagree. But the question is, how can we work together? And my goal is to work with the other council members, our supervisors, to move Fresno forward. Thank
Oscar
you.
Sandoval, how will you be similar? How will you be different from Steve Brandel?
Different? How much time do we have? Here's the main thing, Randy. I'm going to be a voice for everyone that lives in the district, whether you live in Pinedale, whether you live in Fig Garden, whether you live in Forgotten Fresno like I do, close to 99, close to Shaw, close to Blackstone. The thing is, in previous leadership, not everyone in the district has been represented. I want to change that. So that's why I've been having all of my canvassing events in different parts of the district at parts that are central to everyone that lives there. Because, again, I need to give them a voice. I have my beliefs, but I will also work with everyone at City Hall. We do have to remember that these are nonpartisan positions, and at the end of the day, we can't just refuse to work with any of our colleagues. So I will work with everyone, but I also I won't bring about the rhetoric that Steve Brandow brought out. He just talked about people in such disparaging ways that you don't get things done that way. You're not supposed to govern. You don't, as policymakers, we have to be more responsible because the rhetoric that we shout out affects the people that live in our communities, and it affects the city as a whole. We can't have people that are supposed to be elected officials just down talk different parts of our community. It's not good for anyone. So I will work with everyone, but more importantly, I will represent everyone.
Okay, Lawrence Garcia, your turn.
So Steve Brandow and I are friends, and we share many conservative views together, not all, but I will bring that conservative approach to any of the decisions that come across our board. The other fact is that I'm going to bring a business sense to the board. I want to bring a more business-friendly sense, and again, I don't think there's anything wrong with running the city like a business or the district like a business. If the district's running successfully, the business is running successfully, so is the city. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I always start with kindness, and I always start with an open mind to hear what the other people have to say. So I would just continue to listen to what everybody has to say, find where we can find solutions in what that is, and then move forward from there.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to move to closing statements. Let's wrap up with 1 minute from each of you, your best case made to the voters here, and you each have 1 minute to make your best case. So Oscar Sandoval, let's start with you. Closing statement.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Fresno. I grew up having to experience a lot of the good things that the city has to offer, but a lot of the bad things too. About 2 years ago, I had two friends from high school that overdosed on the same day and both died. I'm really jumping into this race because of their memory and because of what we can do better for the city. Growing up here, I had to create a lot of my own opportunities. I'm the first person in my family to go to college, but not only go to college, but get a second master's degree. So I'll bring that mentality to City Hall for you. I'll create policy that is best for everyone in the district. And not only that, but I'll change the negative perception that Fresno has. I said this before, but when you look on YouTube and type in Fresno, the first two videos that you see, one is a street fight, and another one is a long-form news report on our city's meth problem. I want our city to be known for different things. And I think with my leadership, I'm the only progressive candidate. I'm the only one that's not afraid to say what they truly believe in. I will give a voice to everyone. Visit my website, oscarforfresno.com. Remember to vote on August 13th. If you want to call me directly, my phone number is 559-907-9305.
I'm going to cut you off there, Oscar. Thank you. Mike Carbasi?
I want to thank GV Wire and CMAC. And if you're still awake, I want to thank you for watching. No. Yeah.
You kept it lively.
All right. So, I really do care about the future of our city, but I know a lot of what I say focuses on Northwest Fresno because I'm the only candidate born and raised here. And my family has a business here, and we have deep roots here. I think we need to walk before we can run. The basics matter. I talk a lot about public safety because public safety, no matter what part of the city you're in, it's your #1 issue, and I don't want you to become a victim. But also, what's really important is economic development and creating jobs. Northwest Fresno has been great to my family. I want other families to have that opportunity. And I have, from going to Malik after school, going to work in family business, I have a lot of business experience. I'm going to bring that. I created jobs. I'm going to bring that to City Hall. And the other thing I want to say is infrastructure. We didn't talk a whole lot about that. But when you call your councilman because your street light's out, or your curb is broken, or your sidewalk is messed up, I'm the person that you're able to call, and I'll actually be out there because customer service is important to me. But for those in the West area, I want you to know help's on the way. Veterans Boulevard is going to get built. It's going to help with response times, 35,000 cars a day. That overpass over 99 is going to really change things here in Fresno. Please go to my website, MikeForFresno.com. Go on Facebook, like the page. If you want a yard sign, text me or go on the website and request one. My name's Mike Carbasi. I'm sincerely asking for your vote on August 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Jared Gordon.
I'm Jared Gordon. I was born and raised in the heart of Fresno. I live in Northwest Fresno with my wife and my 2 daughters. We've lived there since 2006. I'm deeply enmeshed in the community, and I've been involved in the community as an activist, as a servant of Fresno since I turned 18. It is a passion of mine to give back to the community, and that's why I'm running for city council. But I also don't want to forget about a voice that hasn't been mentioned, or an issue that hasn't been touched on in today's debate, and that's our need for a senior center. Fresno is one of the largest cities in the country without a senior center. If I'm elected, I will dedicate myself to bringing about a senior center that our seniors deserve and that our city sorely needs. We should not be going to Clovis to get senior services. Our senior citizens of Fresno deserve that center, and I will commit to you that I will get that.
Thank you, Jared Gordon. Lawrence Garcia.
So I just want to let the voters in town know that for me, this is a calling. Joining the military to serve our country, getting behind, becoming a firefighter, working for American Ambulance, working at Valley Children's in the ER, going to the police academy to come back and be a sheriff. These are all the things that I've done my whole life. Wanting to give back, wanting to serve, becoming a planning commissioner, wanting to serve, wanting to help my community, being involved in different organizations that bring good services and good help to the community. That's what I want to do. I want to continue doing that. I have a history of successful businesses. I have leadership skills second to none. And if I continue down this path and get an opportunity to show you that I can do this job on August 13th, I would like your vote and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you all, and good luck to you all. That's it for today's District 2 City Council Candidates Forum here at CMAC. I want to thank the folks here at Community Media Access Collaborative for providing these excellent facilities to us here today. I'm Randy Reed. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, August 13th. And to follow the results of the election and all the news in Fresno, visit gvwire.com. Thanks again for being with us.